Well, Stephen, thanks for sitting down and sharing some of your story.
Honored to be here. Happy to be here.
Really grateful. You're an interventionist, but I don't want to tell too much of your story. I want to hear it from you.
Okay.
We talked a little bit on the phone yesterday, and I don't, again, not to jump in too quick, but what I love you talking about, you're talking about interventions with integrity.
Sure.
And so we partner with Valiant with a lot of interventionists. And I'm really excited to hear how you got in this space, hear your story, but actually to dive in really specifically on what that means, what that looks like, because we've got a lot of people that listen or watch that I think there's just a lot of maybe even some misconceptions around intervention. What is it? How do we go about it? I'm even thinking right now there's a person that's close to me that I think probably needs an intervention, but I'm just like, it's such unknown territory.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that offline. I might need your help with that. But first of all, just thank you. Thank you for being here. But tell us a little bit, how did you get into
Okay.
this work?
Well, the short answer is I drank too much.
Okay.
And it's kind of like the last time I got drunk and went to jail, one thing that just happened after another.
Yeah.
And I ended up doing this. But I'm an alcoholic in recovery, and I'm also Catholic.
Okay.
And so I was part of an effort in the Archdiocese of Denver to help the Catholic Church have a more robust response to people that might come to their parish priest and say, I'm struggling, or my husband, my child is struggling with alcoholism, drug addiction. And through that effort, I met a gentleman named Howie Madigan.
Okay.
Now, Howie worked through Harmony Foundation, which is in Estes Park, and that's a treating agency that's been around for over 40 years.
Okay.
And Howie started doing interventions through that organization way back in the 70s,
Okay.
when there really wasn't much of a method or a model in place. And so Howie and I were working together on this effort within the Catholic Church called Outreach for Recovery, and he kept encouraging me to learn how to do interventions. His idea was that I could do them pro bono through the Archdiocese of Denver, and I was resistant to that. And so, I belong to a fellowship that's we support each other and help each other stay sober. It's easy to find. It's very close to the front of the phone book, this organization I belong to. And I had
I'm picking up what you're laying down here. I think I'm following you.
Yeah. So I had a mentor or a sponsor in that organization named Phil Nolan. Now, Phil Nolan was in his 80s. An Irish guy, Irish Catholic guy, had been sober over 30 years. Howie Madigan, Irish Catholic guy, been sober in that organization over 30 years. One day I just let it slip, the name of my mentor. And I didn't occur to me that these two guys might know each other.
Oh, okay.
And they were fast friends. And so my mentor invited me to lunch, and I walked into the restaurant, and there was Howie Madigan and Phil, my sponsor, sitting at this table, and I thought, oh, the gig's up. And so Howie started to train me and mentor me how to do interventions. And then there were some treating agencies in Colorado that I was working with, and I'm doing this pro bono through the Archdiocese. And one of those organizations was called Cedar, and there was a director of admissions named Jeanette Moss, and she really pressured me to get some education and certification so that she could refer to me so that I could do this professionally.
Gotcha.
And it turns out that I really love the work, and so I got the education, and I became a certified addictions counselor back in the day. I have let that certification lapse And I went on to get education, and I'm a certified clinical interventionist is my certification.
Okay. And now what does that mean exactly? We say clinical interventionist.
So I trained with a couple named Jeff and Deborah J.
Okay.
They wrote a book called Love First, which is really the method that most interventionists follow today. Howie Madigan called it a healing method,
Okay.
and Jeff and Deborah J call it the Love First method. And so I trained with them extensively. It was a 5-day training. I went to Minnesota and trained with them. I did supervised interventions where they did clinical supervision for me. And so now I have that certification.
Very cool. I was reading up on you a little bit, and I think it was 2002. Mm-hmm. Is that when you started the Wilkins group?
Yes. Yeah.
It's funny because when I hear in my brain when I say 2002, I'm like, oh, that's not that long ago.
Right.
For some reason, it says it doesn't. And then I was like, wait a minute, that's 2 decades ago. I mean, you've been doing this, your own company, for over 20 years.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, and so much has changed. I could imagine in the last 20 years. What are some of the shifts and just intervention and just things that you've seen in the last 20 years?
Sure. So Howie Madigan said to me once, I have a lot of little pearls of wisdom that are stuck,
Right.
that stuck with me. And Howie said, if we're not in this effort, in this endeavor, helping people overcome addictions, if we're not doing it better, we're not doing it right. Meaning you always have to try and do it better.
Wow.
And so one of the things that I started doing is, in this method of intervention, one of the things I help family members do is write letters to their loved one, to their...
Like an impact letter of sorts.
It's an intervention letter.
Okay.
So an impact letter is, this is how you've harmed me.
Okay.
An intervention letter is more about how much I love you, happy memories that I have of you.
Wow. Okay.
Giving somebody back their strengths, their attributes, because oftentimes when somebody's lost in an addiction, they forget that they're smart and that they have been effective in the past. So reminding them of all of those things.
So this is a very loving, affirming approach.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the way an intervention often looks is that, we'll greet the afflicted person, the loved one, and that's a really loving kind of a greeting. So oftentimes we invite people to an intervention. So a family member will say to them, we love you, and the whole family's really scared about what's going on, what's happening to you. And so we're going to have a family meeting in 3 hours. And we've invited somebody in to help us have that conversation so it doesn't go off the rails. So oftentimes we invite them.
So they kind of know, have a bit of a framework of what they might be walking into?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Other times that's too risky. And family members will say to me, if we try to invite them, if we give them a heads up, they're leaving.
Yeah, yeah.
And so sometimes we do kind of have more of an immediate intervention. We knock on the door and we come in. And of course, at that moment, everybody's emotions are running kind of high. Everybody's anxious. The family members, my clients, they're anxious. Our loved one, the addict, the alcoholic, scared. And so what I instruct the family members to do is, one at a time, you're going to embrace them. And it's not a short little bro hug where you can just kind of get, do that.
Yeah, a couple pats and
you'll
out.
hold on to them.
Wow.
And if they try and leave that embrace early, you just say to them, stay here for a minute. I love you so much and I'm scared. I need to hold on to you. And you pull them back. So after everybody does that, people are a lot calmer. They feel a lot safer.
Yes, yes.
Then I'm going to talk them into what's going on, and I'm going to ask them to listen to a letter. At the end of the letter, there's a question. We have a gift for you today, this opportunity to go get well. Will you accept this gift? right? And then there's some negotiation in between the letters. And so oftentimes we'll get almost an immediate yes, right? After one or two letters, or I facilitated some interventions where we didn't even have to read a single letter. And somebody said, yes, I'll go to treatment.
They
right?
just they saw what was happening and they just got out in front of it type thing.
Well, they've wanted to go to treatment for a long time anyway.
Yeah.
The problem is, if I'm an alcoholic and I go to treatment, they won't let me drink there. So
That is typically one of the rules. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And so I'm stuck in this ambivalence. I want to keep drinking. Alcohol is really important to me, but I want to get healthy too. And so they're already kind of there. They already there's part of them, a healthy part, that wants treatment. So back in the day, as soon as we got a yes, that's it, we're done. And we're gonna get you packed, get you in the car, we're gonna get you moving. And usually they're already packed. A family member is packed for them. I think that we have many goals that we can pursue in an intervention. Getting somebody into treatment is just one of them.
Okay.
Getting them motivated, challenging their helplessness and their hopelessness, learned helplessness, challenging that. Because oftentimes people believe, I can't get clean and sober. I can't get into recovery. I don't know if people have ever, I don't know if somebody's made a genuine effort to quit, to quit drinking, to quit using drugs. But I know they've tried to manage their drinking or their drug use, and they have failed in spectacular fashion for a long time. And so they might believe, I can't get into recovery. Other people can, but not me. I want them going to treatment believing in themselves. I want to offer the family relationships an opportunity to start to heal. And so after we get a yes, I'm going to ask our loved one if they'll listen to the rest of the letters, because we have more than one goal. So will you listen to the rest of the letters? And
Interesting.
I'm not only trying to pursue the goals of helping them find motivation to get well and to heal family relationships. I'm giving that person back, giving them some control back. So oftentimes addicts and alcoholics don't have a lot of control in their life, but they have a delusion that they're in charge, and they're not.
They're
right?
not, yeah.
The addiction's in charge.
Well, I think what you're saying is so powerful because I'm processing for myself, and I had an intervention as well. Not quite exactly how you explained, but if someone were to sit down and I had a bunch of loved ones around and they wanted to read letters to me, I probably would be that guy that was like, "Hey, listen, I'll go," just to kind of make everyone happy, and because I knew I needed it, but I probably would be the one that wouldn't want to hear the letters. And it's so powerful that you said that even if someone tries to get out in front of it, you still have them hear the letters.
I asked
because there's more than one goal. You ask him if that would be okay.
Right.
I love that. I think that's so powerful.
So if I get a yes, I'll listen to the letters. I'm going to give them some more control. I'm going to say, okay, I understand that this can be difficult, and if you need a break, you just give me the nod and you get a break for a while. Or if we come to a point in time that you're just done and you don't want to hear any more letters, you let me know. And then I say, whose letter do you want to hear next? And I give them all of that control.
They're guiding the process at that point.
Right. And we change the letter. So there is a section in the letter where a family member will say, this is how your drinking, your drug use has hurt me.
Okay.
This is what scared this. I was scared to death at this moment. I was angry with you at this moment. I was so hurt when you didn't show up for my wedding, whatever it is. We skip that. I'm not going to have them hear that in the intervention.
If they've
if they've already accepted
I understand. Yeah.
treatment. Now, that letter will follow them to the treating agency, and a smart therapist will use that letter.
Right.
So, in 2 weeks into treatment, somebody says, my drinking wasn't that bad. A therapist will hand them a letter and say, please read this letter out loud to the group, just to remind them that it was that bad. And instead of saying, please go to treatment, I'm gonna have my client, the family member, identify the gift they just received, and they're gonna say thank you. So a sibling can say, you've always been my best friend, and I've missed you so much. Thank you for going to treatment. I can see my best friend coming back into my life. And so,
wow,
I do that now.
I've got goosebumps because I'm thinking about how much I want to say, but I feel sadness because there's a loss for me.
Right.
And what you just described is so beautiful because you said, and I was trying to hold it together when you said that, because that's exactly how I feel. The gift of like, man, I the sadness of the loss of, man, I miss this relationship. I miss what this, and because I remember what it was and what it could be and all those things. And the way that you've framed this, Stephen, I just feel like, because I was about to ask you, how do you help families shift from fear to confidence in this process?
Yeah.
Well, you already answered the question.
Well, it's more than that.
Really?
Right? Oh,
well,
sure.
Keep going. I love this.
Well, fear to confidence. And so I spend about 7 or 8 hours with the team before I ever meet our afflicted loved one, right?
And by team, you just mean family, friends?
Sure. Okay. Family members, friends. I've had pastors sit in on the team. Okay. I've had so they're all my clients. The addict, the suffering loved one, is not my client. They're not my client. Can't be my client. But so the intervention team, all of those people are my clients.
Gotcha.
So I sit with them for 7 or 8 hours before the intervention, and we have 2 sessions, 3.5, 4 hours in length apiece.
Wow.
At the end of the first session, what I do is I hand them an outline for an intervention letter. I walk them through that outline, and I coach them on how to write a letter. In the next session, and this is also how my practice has evolved, we used to just read the letters. One after another, we read the letters. I don't do that way anymore. What I do now is I process the emotional experience that each individual had as they wrote the letter. So where were you sitting when you wrote the letter? Was it quiet? Can you go back to that moment? The introduction of the letter, I ask you to tell this person how much you love them and why they're unique and special to you. Can you remember how you felt when you wrote that down? And sometimes people will say, I felt really sad. I felt really sad. To write an introduction about how much I love you and why you're special to me. I ask them to write happy memories, 3 or 4 of their happiest memories. How did you feel? I felt happy, but I also felt sad. And so we can put that individual in touch with the fact that they've suffered a loss and they haven't allowed themselves to grieve that loss. And maybe for years they're just stuck. I can't acknowledge the loss or grieve it because that would be a betrayal, because my son is right over there, still walking and talking and breathing, right? But in a very real way, they have lost him.
Right.
And so we go through that. Then everybody reads the letters, and I coach them on how to read the letter, about their voice, right? Don't let your voice get angry. Don't let your voice get hard. Don't let your voice run away with you. Oftentimes somebody will start to read a letter and then they're just off to the races. And what they're trying to do is outrun the emotions that go with the words they're reading.
Yes.
So I'll slow them down. Slow down.
That would be me. I would read it real fast.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to feel it. You would have to tell Drew, you need to sit in this and you need to feel it.
Right.
Because I would read it. So I'd be like remember the Micro Machines Man commercial where he's just going real fast? That would be me.
Yeah. Right.
Because I don't want to feel this, man.
Sure.
Yeah.
These are all of the side effects of your medication.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Right.
that'd be me. Yeah.
So the team will sit together and they will hear each other's letters. And it's not just the words. The team members are now emotionally authentic. They're present. They're vulnerable. And that's the hook, right?
Mm-hmm.
But almost always, at some point in the time, we'll hear a very powerful letter. And at the end of the letter, I'll just stop. And I'll say, can you see your son saying no to that letter? And people will say, no. I'm saying, okay, we got him. They're going to treatment, right? We got them. And so the family is that's how I build their confidence. At the end of the second session, I often hear something like this: man, I wish we could just go over there and do this right now.
Yeah, they're ready.
Because I know it's going to work.
Right.
And so if my team shows up and they're confident, that helps the loved one, the afflicted loved one, feel safe. If my team shows up and they don't know, they're not confident, and they're obviously jittery or scared, well then the afflicted loved one thinks these people don't know what they're doing. But if we show up and we are confident and we are strong and we're a cohesive team, then they're safe.
Yeah.
These people know what they're doing. They've got my back.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. I want to go back to, could you unpack a little bit more of this multi-goal
Sure.
model, or I don't know how you explain it, but you talk
Sure.
about you've got, what are those and how does that work with your group?
Sure. And so first, just a little bit about the relationship I have with the team members.
Okay.
Each one a client. And one of the things that therapists we have this ethical obligation to give our clients is called the right to self-efficacy.
Okay.
Which means I'm going to pursue your goals in a way that's acceptable to you. And so that having been said, people call me on the phone and they'll ask me about interventions, and I'll ask them, what do you want? And I don't really hear very often, I want my son in treatment. Mom will say, I want my son back.
Yeah.
Or a spouse will say, I want the person I married healthy and I want them back. So it's not just about getting them into treatment. It's about getting them into the appropriate treatment and setting them up for success. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so of course that's a goal. Mm-hmm. That's the first goal. But I have to, since I owe my clients the right to self-efficacy, I owe my clients, I have to protect their relationships in accordance to their wishes.
Okay.
And so it goes without saying that when alcoholism or addiction comes into a family, every relationship suffers. Not just relationships with the addict or the alcoholic. Mom and dad's relationship suffers, right? Because both of them are feeling like they're failures, and they're hopeless and they're helpless, and they're not always on the same page about how to handle this. Mm-hmm. And other children might be angry with mom and dad for enabling, or the family might be mad with somebody's spouse for enabling, and all of those relationships get dinged. Mm-hmm. So I need to protect those relationships in accordance to the wishes of each individual.
Okay.
Sometimes I'll hear a family member say, "Of course I love her, but her behavior is so risky and destructive. If she doesn't get help quickly, I'm afraid we're going to lose her. So if she's angry with me for a while, I'm okay with that." Somebody else might say, "My relationship with this person is vital to me. I'm afraid I'm going to lose this relationship completely. So you need to protect my relationship." All of that having been said, I need to protect those relationships. But this is also an opportunity for those relationships to start to heal, right? And so
your job in this is it's not, if I'm hearing you right, it's not a client as a whole. You're viewing each person that's going to be in that room as a client, and you're wanting to know what their wishes are specific to
except for the addict.
the addict, right?
The addict cannot be my client.
Right.
Because if I owe him the right to self-efficacy and I say to him, "What would you like to talk about?" he's going to say, "I want to leave."
Right. Right.
And so he's not my client. But
all the other individuals, you're actually doing personal, not work, but you're wanting to know from each one what their intents are and goals.
Each one has the rights of a client.
Yeah. That's cool.
And so this is an opportunity for those damaged relationships to start to heal too. Everybody knows that if you have a wound, and you want that wound to heal, the first thing you need to do is clean it out. And so family members get to show up and tell their truth. Oftentimes, somebody who's struggling with an addiction will maintain some delusions in order to give themselves permission to continue with this destructive behavior. And sometimes that delusion sounds like this: it's my life. I can do what I want with my life. I'm not hurting anybody but myself. And that is such crap. Nobody's life belongs exclusively to them, right? You're married, you have kids, you gave big chunk of yourself to your wife and to your kids and siblings and parents. When you have a friendship, you give a little piece of yourself away. And the idea that I'm an island and I'm only hurting myself is crap.
Yeah.
So through the intervention, we take that delusion away from them. That delusion might be so pervasive, somebody might believe this: I'm no longer a lovable person. Who could possibly love me? Look at the mess I've made of myself.
So the shame,
maybe my family would be better off without me. Maybe the best thing for me to do is distance myself from the family and get through this life as quick as I possibly can. Right? I'm no longer lovable. Well, if these people show up and they demonstrate in an undeniable way, you're lovable.
Right.
If you're lovable, you no longer have permission to self-destruct. If you're loved, you can't just continue to ruin yourself.
Wow. So in a lot of ways, you're exposing them to this idea of how connected they really are to everyone else's human experience.
Absolutely. There's a woman, Dr. Ann, I can't remember. She wrote a book called, I'm struggling here. And I'm going to give you a quote, and I can't remember who to accredit this to.
Okay.
She says, "Love makes us vulnerable, but we know that at the darkest moments of our lives, nothing but contact with those that we love will do." And that is true for a healthy human being. It is not true for somebody who's dependent upon drugs and alcohol. At the darkest moments of my life when I was drinking, I walked right past my family and friends who wanted nothing but to take care of me, and I went to the bar. Right?
Wow.
And so we're going to give those relationships, we're going to highlight those relationships.
Yeah, that's so good. One of your goals is, or I think it is, and correct me if not, but to help the addicted loved one give voice to their existing motivation. Mm-hmm. How do you draw that out?
Okay. I'm going to tell you a quick story. Okay. So years ago, I was working with a family in one of the wealthier townships around Denver. And on the intervention team, we had mom and dad. There were 3 siblings, and there was maternal grandfather or grandpa. And we were talking about a woman who was an attorney. I'm going to give her a fictitious name. We'll call her Michelle. And Michelle was an attorney. Her life looked great from the outside. She was doing well professionally, but she wasn't showing up for family functions anymore. And the family knew not to call her after 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening because she couldn't make any sense on the phone. Mm-hmm. So she's drinking too much. Mm-hmm. Now, maternal grandfather was a retired Marine colonel. And before the intervention, when I met him, he said these words to me. He said, "Alcoholism is not a disease. Alcoholics are just a bunch of whiny little piss ants that don't have enough character to handle their liquor.
Whoa.
And my granddaughter does not need treatment. Treatment is a scam. She needs my boot in her ass."
Wow.
And that was the colonel.
That's tough.
So the colonel was one of the team members, and I wasn't really sure I wanted him on the team. I thought he was going to sabotage us.
Right.
But he was in. And so he went through this 7 and 8 hours training with me. One of the things I do is I drill down and give families some really robust information about the disease of addiction, mm-hmm. a brain injury disease, mm-hmm. an emotional disorder, a psychological disorder. And I give them the ABCs. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm doing that, and I'm looking at the colonel, and I couldn't read him at all. He would sit ramrod straight. He's taking notes. I don't see him. I have a hard time reading him. So they decided to surprise this young woman with the intervention. They invited her down to the family home on a Friday night. So she walked into the room, and she was supposed to have dinner, and there was food there, but she knew something was up.
Okay.
And she was furious. And so the family members tried to embrace her. She allowed her mother to embrace her and her grandfather to embrace her. She wouldn't let anybody else hug her.
Wow.
They all sit down in their circle behind me, and it's my job to get her to sit down and have the conversation. So I offer to shake her hand. I introduce myself. I say, "Will you sit down and talk with your family?" And she cursed like a Marine, right? Wow. So I hear, "I'm not going to blah, 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 sit down until I know what the blah, blah, blah you want to talk to me about." And I said, "We need to talk to you about your drinking." And she cursed some more. "Blah, blah, blah. Is this one of those damn interventions? Where are the cameras?"
Oh, wow.
Because a television show, right?
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, there are no cameras. We're not going to do that to you." And then she glares at the family over my shoulder, and she's just looking daggers at them. I had also coached the family about eye contact. If she's given you the stink eye, mm-hmm. you will not maintain eye contact. Don't look at your feet. Don't be submissive, but look somewhere else.
Really? And why is that? I'm curious.
Because because if you stay with them, you're kind of feeding their anger.
Oh, okay.
And I don't want them to be angry.
Gotcha.
Right?
So you're breaking eye contact with them, but yeah. Okay.
Also, when your family shows up to help you because you're in trouble, anger is not an appropriate response. And we're just not buying into that.
Got it.
So her head kind of pivots around, mm-hmm. and I can feel the family behind me not giving her what she wants.
Okay.
And then she sticks and she's looking at her grandfather. That's where he's sitting. And I thought, oh man, the colonel is trying to stare her down.
Yeah.
And so I look over my shoulder. I almost don't recognize Grandpa. He's slumped in his seat. His face is fallen. He's starting to tear up. He's crying, man. And I look back at Michelle, and she looks at her shoes, and I see a little tear form in her eye. And then she looks back up at me. I think she's going to sit down. She looks at me. She looks at Grandpa. She says, "What took you so long?" She knew she was in trouble with alcohol. She wanted help.
Wow.
She was trying to live up to her grandfather's ideals. This is not a disease. Just be tough, right? And so when Grandpa showed up and put his broken heart on display, she said yes right away. She wanted to go to treatment.
And you almost didn't want him in the room because of how he showed up initially, but that's who she needed.
Yeah.
But kudos to the grandpa for doing his own work and allowing him to show the vulnerability.
Yeah. I found out later that the grandpa was raised by an alcoholic.
Okay.
He got out of the family at the end of high school. He went to college, ROTC. He left 2 siblings behind. One of those siblings, his younger brother, also became alcoholic and died in a 1-car accident. And there's a lot of suspicion that may have been suicide.
Okay.
So for him to acknowledge alcoholism was a disease was really hard for him, right? Because he was going to have to forgive his father, and he was going to have to forgive his brother.
Wow. So he had so much of his own work that he was staring down.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a powerful story. I mean, it's like, it's almost like I just got to sit in that for a minute because it's just it's so intense.
Yeah.
It's so intense, but it's beautiful when you're talking about drawing out the motivations. I guess it's part of why you're great at what you do, but there's something different for everybody.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to know that that's what would have been the thing for her.
Right.
In that moment.
Right.
So I'm guessing for you, there's just a part of it that's a little bit of, I'm a musician, so it's almost jazz. It's almost like you've done the training and the prep.
Yeah.
Yeah, some improv in there, right?
Oh, there is. Of course there is.
Because you didn't know that was going to happen in that moment. I mean, you've got your training and you know how to handle those moments, but you didn't know how she was going to respond. And
the lesson for me in that experience was that the family has its own wisdom, and the family knows the family, and they know the addict. I know addiction. I know interventions. I have my area of expertise. I bring that to the table. Need to collaborate with the family because their area of expertise is their loved one and that family, right?
Wow.
And I was told, no, Grandpa needs to be here.
Yep.
And but I wasn't feeling comfortable about it.
They knew that he was part of the ticket to getting her to break and to.
He was the patriarch of the family. She needed his permission.
The line,
to
what
go
took
to
you so
treatment.
long, that's going to stick with me. I mean, I don't even have words to describe what comes up for me when you told that part of that story.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, yeah. I mean, just I think some of the responsibility, some of the, I guess I just heard such loneliness and sadness in her voice when she said that, just of like how much she's been carrying for so long.
Right.
Almost like the relief, like finally
Sure.
a rescue came.
Sure.
I mean, it makes me have more empathy for these loved ones that are struggling in addiction. There's so much more than what meets the eye on the surface going on, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
There are 2 reasons that interventions work. Somebody who's struggling, they know they're struggling.
Okay.
They know they're in pain. They know the destruction that addiction brings into their life. They're living it. And they do want help. At some level, they want help. So that's one of the reasons interventions work. The other reason is because with a little bit of work, right, the family, if you love somebody who's struggling with an addiction, you have to survive their addiction. And you build defenses, and those defenses prevent you from showing up and being authentic and vulnerable in that relationship, because you've been hurt so often. So a lot of the work I do is deconstructing those defenses so that the family can show up and be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so with that kind of honesty and love, that can be more powerful than the voice of the addiction for a short period of time, right?
Yeah.
Long enough to get somebody where they need to go.
So I want to jump to a conversation around helping know when the loved one is ready to say yes. Because I'm imagining there's going to be families and people listening or watching this that are kind of on the fence of like, do they really need an intervention? Are they really struggling? Are they, and I know you deal with this all the time, that are like, even some of your first phone calls, I'm sure, are like, I don't know if this is what we need, but I just maybe, it's like, can you help us identify maybe some signs or some ways to know if our loved one, if this is an appropriate response for them?
Sure. And so how can you tell if somebody wants to change their life? Not necessarily go to treatment
right.
But they are, if somebody is recognizing that my drug use or my drinking is destructive to me and to my family. And here's some signs.
Okay.
They start to lie about their drinking or their drug use. And why they do that, why people lie about drinking, is shame. I'm ashamed of the way that I drink. That's motivation to get better. When people distance themselves from family, when people give up recreation or things that used to be a part of their lives that they really loved. They don't go skiing anymore. They don't go fishing anymore, right? Alcoholism creates a depressive disorder. When people are depressed, they don't want to be depressed. And once they get there, they're not drinking to feel better anymore. That ship has sailed.
Right.
And failed.
Yeah, both, yeah.
They're drinking to not feel. And when you want to be comfortably numb, you're numbing yourself from a lot of the negative consequences of your addiction. So the addiction is feeding on itself. All of those are signs that people want to get better, and they get worse, man.
Sure.
I lose relationships. I lose marriage. I lose a job. I get arrested. I go to jail. How could you not want to quit doing that?
Are there scenarios by which an intervention is not appropriate? It's not the right time for one? Like, would you ever advise, hey, this isn't the right next step? Or I'm just curious about that.
Sure. So I think that the one thing that we really have to be aware of is safety.
Okay.
And so if there are people who are violent in defense of their addiction, or have been violent in the past with family members, and so we're not going to do an intervention there. They have guns in the house. Well, can we get them out of the house for the intervention? And not every intervention works, right? That doesn't mean that just because we don't get somebody to treatment doesn't mean that the intervention was a failure.
Sure.
Because at the end of the day, everybody on the intervention on the intervention team will know they left it all on the field. I have done everything I possibly can to help my loved one. and they're out of my reach. Family members don't know that before the intervention. They're always kicking themselves. What more can I do? What did I do wrong?
Yeah.
And so they get to know they've done everything they possibly can.
And there's some peace that comes with that of like, hey,
I hope so. Yeah.
I've done what I could.
Yeah.
Well,
Earlier this year, no, I guess it was the end of last year, into 2024, I facilitated an intervention for a young woman who was living the ski bum life, and she was alcoholic, and she was really sick, and the family came together. We did an intervention, 3.5 hours. We're trying to get her to go to treatment or at least go to a doctor. And she just wasn't having it. The best we could do is at the end of that 3.5 hours, she said, I'll come back and I'll talk to you some more tomorrow. The family had a good dinner together. I gave the family instructions, right? Neutral corners, enjoy each other's company, watch a football game, have dinner. Don't talk about this anymore.
Right.
And we'll get back together tomorrow. That young woman took the intervention letters. She went to some friends who live in the metro area. She spent the night with some friends. The report is that she read those letters with her friends. She had made a decision to go to treatment. She went to sleep and she didn't survive the night. Right? And that's brutal.
That's brutal.
That is so hard. What killed me was I didn't get to speak to the parents for a couple of days. They just weren't in a place where they could talk to me. But when they did talk to me, they said, thank you. We know that we tried everything we could.
Wow. That's heavy.
And so, with those kind of consequences, I rarely say this is not a good fit for an intervention.
Sure.
Right?
Help us, and I'm gonna be respectful of your time, but this is so valuable and so good. Help us as your clients when a loved one may say no.
Okay.
What do we do after that?
Okay.
How do we help us navigate that?
So, early, back in the 70s and 80s, there was a model of intervention called the Johnson Institute model. And that was about consequences. If you don't accept treatment, we're going to protect your children from your drinking. You got to move out of the house. We're not going to support you financially anymore. And that was kind of it. So those kind of consequences, I don't have any. Sometimes I do a professional intervention. So employers or partners in a law firm sit somebody down and say, okay, here's what's going on. If you don't accept treatment, you're going to lose your job, or we're doing this. No problems there in that environment. Or the criminal justice system. Happens all the time. You will go to treatment or you will go to jail, right? No problems there. But in a family, that can be really destructive to the relationships. So oftentimes, a family will be in a place where they are ready to say, if you don't, we tried everything. We didn't want to get to this place in the intervention, but if you don't go to treatment, you have to leave the house. I've had people who were on probation for felonies who have stolen checks and forged checks from their parents. If you don't go to treatment, you're going to be detoxing in jail. That's up to the family.
Okay.
There are interventionists who still insist that you have a bottom line or a consequence. If they don't accept treatment, Mom, if they don't accept treatment, you're going to have to tell them they can't live in the house anymore. And if Mom's heart isn't in that,
right,
you're violating that woman's right to self-efficacy, and you are doing something really destructive. because if mom's heart isn't in it, she might kick her child out of the basement for a few days or for a week,
It's not gonna
but
last.
she's going to
Yeah.
let him come back.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the family is angry with her. She feels guilty and awful. And our addict, our alcoholic, has learned once again, I can do anything I want and there won't be any consequences. So it's up to the family whether they're going to go down that road or not. If they do decide to go down that road, we're going to do it in a way where any anger attached to that healthier boundary, which is a term that I like to use rather than consequence.
Yeah.
Any anger, I want that anger directed at me. So I'm the guy that might, deliver the bad news.
Right. You don't care if they're mad at you. You're trying to
No.
protect the client.
Actually, if there's anger, I want it following me.
Yeah.
If we need a bad cop in the intervention, I am the only bad cop ever. My relationship with that person, with the loved one, is disposable and temporary.
Mm-hmm.
The family members, their relationships are vital and enduring.
Mm-hmm.
So I always tell my families this at the end of an intervention, right? Or sometime during the preparation. I want you to imagine a year from after the intervention, your son, your spouse, they're sober and they're grateful. And they say to you, man, life is so much better now. And thank you for helping me get into treatment. Thanks for the intervention.
Mm-hmm.
But Stephen, that guy was kind of a jerk. You're going to agree with him.
Mm-hmm.
You will throw me under the bus. Otherwise, that anger comes in your direction. Right. So
I love that. Okay, I got one last question.
sure.
And maybe we have to do a part 2 on this because this is so good.
I have all the time in the world.
Okay,
man.
good. Well, I want to just have you give some final thoughts on integrity in intervention. I know that's a big thing for you.
It is.
And I've heard that in everything you've said so far. I mean, this integrous process that you're in. So you've already talked about it, but I wanted you just kind of high level talk your philosophy as an interventionist and what does that look like to have integrity, or even what does a lack of integrity look like in an intervention process?
Sure. And so I think if there's a family who gets to a place in their life where they're looking for an interventionist, they're vulnerable and they can be taken advantage of. And oftentimes that happens. And so I'm a big believer in certification for interventionists. The state of Colorado does not certify interventionists. And so there are very few interventionists in Colorado who actually have a certification.
Okay.
There are a lot of people that claim they're certified, and they might show you a piece of paper that is a certification that they took certain classes. This certifies that so-and-so took these classes in interventions. That's not a certification. And so I think the interventionist should be certified. Oftentimes, people will hire interventionists. I had one family, they called me, they said, we tried an intervention a couple months ago. That guy took a lot of our money. We don't have much money left. Will you help us? And we want to try again. And I happen to work on a sliding scale.
Okay.
I have never said no to a family that needs an intervention. So if I work pro bono, I work pro bono. I get to sleep at night.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked with that family, and their son was addicted to opiates. He was on felony probation. This was the guy that had stolen and forged checks from each of his parents and from a nonprofit organization that his grandfather was treasurer for. They had him on surveillance video stealing a very expensive bicycle from his sister. And the family was ready to say, if you don't go to treatment, we're going to report you. Now, the first interventionist flew in from out of state, charged them more than I've ever made for an intervention. The young man walked into that intervention. He was mean. He was cavalier. He kind of laughed and said, I'm not doing this. I'm leaving. And he walked out of the house. And the interventionist never mentioned, you're on probation and you've been committing crimes. So we tried it later, and the guy came into the house, and he was mean and he was cavalier. And he looked at me and he said, I bet my family didn't tell you they tried this before. They tried this a couple of months ago. And you're bigger than that last guy was, but you're older than he is too, and I'm pretty sure I can kick your ass, and I'm leaving.
Whoa.
And I said, you can leave if you want to. Cops know you're here. And that stopped him.
Right.
I said, cops know you're here.
Yeah.
Cops know that you're on probation. Cops have been informed that you've been forging checks. So you can walk out the door and you can detox in jail, or you can sit down and talk to your family.
Wow. I bet he sat down.
Oh, he was a kind young man. He was very respectful after that.
A little Jekyll and Hyde going on there.
Yeah.
That's funny.
And so, but that first interventionist robbed those people.
Yeah.
He robbed them.
Right.
And so another thing that kind of disturbs me is that oftentimes interventionists will facilitate an intervention, and then they will say to the family, when your loved one comes back from treatment, I'm going to be their sober coach. I love sober coaches. I love that. But I think that relationship has got to be a really tight relationship, right? And I think that if somebody's going to have a sober coach, they should be able to pick a sober coach that is going to fit their needs. And so if you're starting out, if you're starting that relationship, sober coach, client, and the client is already at least embarrassed or angry or hurt by the person who's going to be their sober coach.
Yeah, you can't be the bad cop if you got to turn around and be their coach.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
And so I think that's all about creating an income stream for an interventionist. I don't think that is an ethical practice at all.
Yeah.
And that disturbs me.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've seen that go sideways.
Well,
right?
I appreciate your honesty about that, and it makes sense based on what you just unpacked for us. And the role of the interventionist is to be, and sometimes the scapegoat,
right? And
it is counter to what the sober coach needs to be,
right?
So it makes total sense when you say it that way.
Yeah,
yeah.
And I have people that I facilitated their interventions, and later on they became my friends. Mm-hmm. Michelle, the attorney I talked about earlier. So there are people that I run across.
Sure. Once they start healing, they healthy, and they see, hey, I hated you back then, but I'm so grateful for you now. I'm sure that happens a fair amount.
Right.
Yeah.
But more often, maybe more often, they just don't want to have any more contact with me, and I can understand that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
To be an addict and an alcoholic.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing to have some guy out in the world who knows your secrets.
Yeah.
And so I keep those secrets tight, right?
Yeah.
I don't talk about them.
Yeah. Stephen, thank you.
You are
welcome. This has been incredibly helpful for me personally, for people listening and watching. I mean, I don't know that there's more important or profound work to be done on the planet than helping our loved ones get healing and get healthy.
Well,
thank you for what you do.
I'm just a piece of the puzzle. There are the people in treatment agencies who are doing the same work, right? So, yeah,
Takes all of us.
It ends up that what 25 years ago, what I did not want to do, I love this job.
Yeah, I can tell. You're tender when you talk about it, which I appreciate. It's not clinical in the sense of it's just cold, it's just whatever. Like seeing your eyes fill with tears, even after a couple decades of doing this, that means something to me, and that means something to people you work with, because it's more than just a job for you. I can tell this is what you've been called to do, and and it's actually really, really meaningful to hear you talk about it the way you do. So thank you for sharing it with us. We'll have to have you back if you're willing. Come
I'd
back
love
and
to
let's.
come back.
There's
You
plenty
bet.
more to talk about. So.
There is. This is a big subject, and
Yeah.
I love talking about it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, my friend. I appreciate it.
Thank you.